This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, from Philadelphia to Erie and from Scranton to Pittsburgh, it's Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenewalt, Senior Fellow of the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. I'm joined by my co-host, Maura Donnelly. Maura, welcome.
Hello, Charlie.
Why, did you hear the latest out of China? The Chinese president has decided that he's going to eliminate term limits so he can serve indefinitely.
Oh, I did read about that. Yeah, that's very convenient.
Oh, well, he must be, he must be jealous of Mr. Putin.
Yeah, that could be it.
And we see very unusual turn in politics there, as we've seen in Pennsylvania recently with the redistricting case.
There's a lot going on. Yeah.
Well, we have one of the best people here with us today to talk about Pennsylvania politics because she's running for governor. We have Laura Ellsworth with us today. It was a candidate for the Republican nomination for governor. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Charlie. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's very kind of you to join us today. I guess to start off with, could you tell us a little bit about your background? It's so it reads
impressive. Is
yes,
what it is.
It's very impressive, and I hardly know where to start. Could you introduce yourself to our viewers?
Sure, I'm happy to do it. Well, I am, more than anything else, I am a mother and a wife. We were just talking about our kids off air. And I am also a lawyer. I've been practicing law. I'm a litigator for almost 40 years now. And I ran the Pittsburgh office of one of the largest law firms in the world called Jones Day. And as a part of that, I was invited to join in what Western Pennsylvania does pretty much better than any place else I have ever seen across the country and all the places I've worked, which is to engage the leaders of the private sector and to leverage the resources and experience and thought processes of the private sector, unite them with the public sector, and get things done. And so I had had the opportunity to do that for the last 15 years or so in Western Pennsylvania. And when I got to Western Pennsylvania, it was dead in the water. And I came from Princeton University right out of college to go to the University of Pittsburgh Law School, following a guy. Fell out of love with the guy, fell in love with Western Pennsylvania, and stayed.
That happens a lot.
Yeah, life turns out okay,
yes,
right? It turns out okay. But what happened in Western Pennsylvania, it was that magic of the private sector and public sector working together that transformed Western Pennsylvania from dead in the water to one of the most livable places in the nation. And what we did there could be done and should be done every place across Pennsylvania. And it's ripe for the taking, but it requires the experience and will and vision to get it done. And I knew how to do it, having learned it in Western Pennsylvania. I looked at what was necessary. I didn't see anybody else who was going to do it. And I thought, I couldn't live with myself. I would be ashamed of myself forever if I didn't step up and try to deliver what I know the people of Pennsylvania need and deserve to have delivered to them from their government.
Well, it sounds like you're sharing a little bit of the thought process involved with that decision of, I think I'll run for governor. You don't just wake up one day and say, I think I'll run for governor. Tell us a little bit about what got you there and how you came to that conclusion that that was the right thing to do.
So it evolved over time. I think part of it started when the work that we did over time, we kept bumping into regulations or processes or procedures in Harrisburg that just got in the way of good, decent people in the community trying to do the right thing for each other to move things ahead. And then so many times when I went up to Harrisburg, whether we were talking about tax reform or pension reform or education or infrastructure, no matter what it was, so many leaders in Harrisburg said, if you give us the choice between doing something and nothing, we'll do nothing every time because you can't get unelected for doing nothing.
Wow.
And they're not bad people.
No.
They're right.
No,
they're right.
How everything operates.
Right? That's on us. And so
Yeah.
I think, so I'm a get-it-done person. We have a political system where we incentivize our representatives to do nothing. We need to fix that. And to me, that required a non-politician who has no dog in this hunt other than getting done what people need to get done to change a system that is fundamentally broken, to make it work for all of us again. That's why I felt a non-politician, but with somebody with enough grounding in all of these issues for the last 15 years, needed to be the person who stepped up and said, we're going to put all the noise, all the self-interest, all the shouting that's going on in the world, put it to the side and focus on getting things done that need to get done, full stop.
Well, Laura, your career is somewhat politically neutral. I mean, Governor Rendell named you the top businesswoman in Pennsylvania, and then Governor Corbett appointed you to the state system of higher education. So we have governors from different parties who are recognizing your talents and the contributions that you can make. I believe currently you're the chair of the Greater Pittsburgh Chamber of Commerce.
Former chair.
Former chair, excuse me. And in 2017, you were named Lawyer of the Year by the best lawyer in America. This is quite a collection of accolades. And how long did you work?
Bipartisan accolades.
Yes, exactly. How did you get to know Governor Rendell and Governor Corbett and stay on good terms with both of them?
I think it's in part because I'm a trained lawyer. So I come out of the adversary system, right? Not only am I good at negotiating, I guess, but I come out of an adversary system where I absolutely believe that opposite sides, argued hard, produce the greatest truth. I believe that. I've seen it work 100 times. And the other thing I have seen work through my law career is that when you give 6 or 12 ordinary people the facts, they will get it right almost every time. Abraham Lincoln said that, a lawyer himself. And I believe that. I've seen it happen. And so this idea that government is smarter than the people, or that the little people won't understand complicated issues, of course they will. Everybody in Pennsylvania understands the issues of pensions and taxes and everything else perfectly well. And to me, it is the job of government to marshal the facts, give them to the people honestly and openly, and let them decide. And one of the things I've really prided myself on over the years, the other thing I know from the adversary system, is that nobody has a monopoly on good ideas. And that my opponent was often raising really good points, right? And that I needed to listen to that, and I needed to incorporate that, and I needed to think about how we were going to get to yes, or how we were going to achieve the objective. And if you talk to people who've worked with me over the years, I care not whether you are Republican or Democrat or from Pittsburgh or the rural areas or from Philadelphia or male or female or anything else. I don't care. If you have an honest desire to get things done for people and you come around the table, we will get it done. And if you don't have that honest desire, you will be invited to leave because you are in the way. And in my experience, it doesn't matter what your label is. It matters what your intention is. And I think one of the things of all times now, we need to stop the yelling and the labeling and the accusatory language. And we have to understand that we are all in this together, and we always have been. And I hear so many people talk about that they wish it were that way. It's on us. We should just make it that way, and we should just be that way. And it's time that we did that.
But yet in your essay in the Philadelphia Inquirer, you say that Governor Wolf has abdicated his role on governing the state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I believe he has. I believe he has been absent in the role that a governor needs to exercise. And I don't think that that is cruel. I think that is speaking the truth to power, which is what I have always tried to do, and what I continue to try to do in this whole election process, is speak the truth to power on behalf of the people who deserve government to work for them. And they deserve leadership and somebody who is willing to engage. And one of the criticisms I hear is that when I get my mind on something, I'm like a little terrier on your ankle, and I will not let go. Yeah, I will not let go, because I know that we need to accomplish certain things. And I won't quit once I see that in my mind's eye, and I will not step back and point the finger at somebody else. So I won't put the finger at the legislature and say, oh, it's their problem, it's not my problem as governor, nor will I do what the legislature sometimes does, which is say, I'm trying to do this right, and put the finger at the governor. Everybody is trying to do right by everybody else. It is just a question of, when I look at what has happened over the last 3 years. As a lawyer, I look at objective facts, right? I look at a governor who has never signed a budget in 3 years. I've run a business. It is the core thing, two core things for any business operation, and every one of your listeners knows this, you need a business plan and a budget. And our state has neither. And we wonder why we can't seem to accomplish anything. Those two simple things would make a huge and profound difference in this state, as would mobilizing the private sector. Government's not the solution to most things. The private sector is. But a role that the governor could and should play, in my judgment, is seeing the big picture, framing that vision for the state, and then mobilizing people around that vision. And that's why I talk about the map that I think we'll get to a little bit. A map, a visual picture that should be hanging on the governor's wall of what we intend Pennsylvania to look like 10 years from now. And we are all marching toward that goal together. And that is absent, and you can't make forward progress without knowing where you're going, and that's where we are right now.
Well, before you can take on Governor Wolf, you have to get through the primary. You get some interesting challengers there. So, you know, let's pretend I'm in the voting booth and I have a choice between three, is it now? Is
Yes.
it three people? Three people now. You, Mr. Wagner, Mr. Mango. Tell me why I should pull the lever for you.
Because I think you want somebody who will actually get things done. No political stake at all. Just get things done for you, nothing else. And I think we have, and the other thing I think you need is you need to ask yourself, what leadership style and experience do you think is most effective in your life, right? Politics is no different, is what motivates people. In my experience, well, so I think we have one politician in the race, as you know, and we have one outsider in the race.
Right.
Right.
I think the one is trying not to be an insider by some of the ads. So, okay, one insider, one outsider.
I think you clearly have one insider
Yeah.
Who is very inside, and so he's a politician, right? He's now running for another office. He's totally the party's endorsed candidate. He's a politician, believe me. And so you have one politician who has those issues, I think, and there's also a leadership style. So he is he has never been anything other than lovely to me, so I will say that, but he has a very bombastic leadership style. That is his leadership style, and that is how he tries to be an effective leader. In my experience, when you have to organize a large group of people who may have a fairly healthy ego and want to get things done in their own way. Yelling at them and rushing at them and calling them names and wrestling them to the ground is not the most effective way to get them to line up and work with you and work behind your vision. That's just a personal thing. I just don't think that's effective, and I think if you look at his record, I think that might prove itself, just as a lawyer who looks at objective facts. Mr. Mango, again, very intelligent guy, a McKinsey healthcare consultant, West Point, a wonderful man. To my knowledge, since the day he moved to Pennsylvania, he has never devoted any time to civic or community activities, any of the issues that we've done. As you point out, I've done a lot of things in the community, more than 20 nonprofits and the Economy League and the conference and economic development and tax law, all of these things. I'd never heard of them, nor had anybody else I knew. And I think particularly in a place like Western Pennsylvania, which offers so many opportunities. There are so many issues on which we could have used somebody with his intellect and brains, but he wasn't there. And Elsie Hillman is one of my great mentors. She mentored a generation of people, of leaders in Western Pennsylvania. And she would say all the time that some people go into politics because they want to do something. Some people go into politics because they want to be something. And I think this may be a situation where it's a be without the do. But I think, I think there are three good choices for voters on the Republican side. I really do. And I think that it is important that voters engage. My son, we were talking about, was 20 years old. And the presidential election was his first presidential election. And just about everyone we knew, Republicans and Democrats, was voting against somebody rather than for somebody.
Yeah. That's true.
And that broke my heart for my son, for his generation, and for my country. And so one of the things that I resolved to be in this race was a leader who would lead with vision, with facts, with honesty, with candor, and with the belief, the absolute unerring belief that we can be better And we can do all of these things. There is absolutely no reason that we should not be the #1 place to live and work in this country. We have every asset that we need to do that, and we should just get on with that. And so in terms of leadership style, that is how I have always led. I have always led in a bipartisan way. I have always wanted to deliver results, not just talk, talk, talk. I can't stand that.
We have 45 seconds left. So I have to interrupt you. One of the parts of your platform is you want budget discipline and transparency. You talk of a 2-year plan. Like Governor Corbett, are you advocating a 2-year budget cycle or not?
I believe we should have a 2-year budget cycle, either in real time or in terms of planning. We can plan 2 years ahead if we just decide to do that. And I also think that we need to amend our Constitution to have a no budget, no pay. If we don't have a budget on time, balanced, then neither the legislature nor the governor gets paid until we do.
Laura, 15 seconds.
Okay, redistricting. Are we going to get this resolved?
We will get it resolved because rule of law will play itself out in one way or the other. We will. I also believe, however, and I called for this before the redistricting crisis happened, we should have a bipartisan commission of citizens, not politicians, who come together to draw these districts. And had we had that, this would not have happened. I think we need that. I think it's time. And I think it honors the vote of every Pennsylvanian if we proceed in that fashion. And I would like to see us do that.
And on that note, we want to thank you for being with us. We hope you'll join us in the future, and we ask you to stay tuned to the second segment. We'll be right back after this.
Behind the Headlines is brought to you as a public service by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, helping hospitals provide healing, health, and hope to communities across the state. And by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry. The Pennsylvania Chamber serves as the frontline advocate for business on Pennsylvania's Capitol Hill by influencing the legislative, regulatory, and judicial branches of state government. Additional underwriting provided by the Worrell Corporation Foundation, based in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, by the Edward H. and Jeannie Arnold Foundation, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business. Behind the Headlines is also supported as a public service by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Visit pahighwayinfo.org.
Hi, welcome back to the second segment of Behind the Headlines. On this segment, Maura and I are joined by Nathan McGrath. Nathan is the Vice President and Litigation Counsel of the Fairness Center. Welcome to the show, Nathan.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
We're very happy to have you join us and our viewers.
We want to learn a little bit about you and the Fairness Center, so you can
great.
start with either one, but
Okay.
We're curious. Who are you? What do you do?
Right. So, as he introduced, I'm Vice President of Litigation Counsel. That means I get to wear a couple different hats, but my first love is really litigation, so I think that's why they brought me here, really. So the Fairness Center is a nonprofit public interest law firm. We represent those who are injured by public sector union officials. So that could be an organization, that could be a person. Anyone who feels that they have an injury can come to us, and we represent them for no cost.
Oh, that's great. Well, there's a big issue right now before the Supreme Court, and that's the Janus case. Do you want to tell us a little bit, give us some background on that, because this is going to shake things up depending on how it comes down.
And what is your connection to it?
Sure. Well, I can. I'll start with our connection. Our connection is that we currently have a case. It's called Hartnett versus Pennsylvania State Education Association, and that case actually was filed last year. It's in the Middle District here in Harrisburg, and it brings the same exact issue that the Janus case it brought before the court. Janus was just a little bit further ahead of us. So our clients actually are very interested. They're 4 school teachers in Pennsylvania, and they have the same complaint that Mark Janus does. And so what they did in the Janus case is we filed briefs on their behalf. They're called amicus curiae briefs, and they're friend of the court briefs. And so they actually were able to file it in the Janus case to show what their interests were. So that's kind of our connection and our tie to the Janus case. The Janus case, you have Mark Janus, who's a state employee in Illinois, and he felt that his constitutional rights were being violated because he was forced to pay for services and representation from the union that he didn't ask for and he didn't want. And he was a non-member of the union, yet he was still compelled to pay those fees. So He filed his lawsuit. It went up through the federal court system, and the Supreme Court decided to hear it, and that's the oral arguments that happened in the past.
Well, let me stop you right there. So
Sure.
Doesn't Illinois have something like Pennsylvania does, an agency shop?
Well, they do authorize that in law. So Pennsylvania is like Illinois in that they allow for agency shop or fair share fees. It goes under a lot of different names,
Well,
but the union to...
Yeah, so our viewer will understand. So one was not, if Illinois has an agency shop law, as does Pennsylvania, one is not compelled to join the union, but one is compelled to pay for the services that they offer you, representation and grievance processing, even if you're not joining that organization. They do that for one anyway. Is that correct?
That's very correct, and that's a big distinction to make, because often people are mixing up union membership but being forced to pay when you're a non-member. And so this is correct, where both states have, where even if you're a non-member, you don't want to be a member of the union, you've resigned or you never joined, you are still forced to pay the fair share fee, union fees, whatever they call it, agency shop fee.
Because most people don't know what agency shop
Right,
is.
right.
Right. Yep.
And,
Yeah.
this goes back to the 70s, doesn't it? This ability of the unions to force the collection of fees, even if you're not a member of the union.
Yeah, that's correct. It was a case called Abood versus Detroit Board of Education. It was in 1977, and you had in that case non-members again saying, we shouldn't have to pay. We didn't ask for your representation. We don't want to pay for this, this representation. And the court said, well, no, actually, we're going to allow them to charge you for what we see as collective bargaining activities, but you don't have to pay for political fees. And the court actually said in that, we're not really sure how this is going to work out, but this is what we think. This is what we think we're going to do. Yeah. So that's kind of the decision they came to, and they left it for kind of the evolution of this area of law to figure out, okay, what exactly gets paid for, and how do we do this? So
the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, had a similar case before it pretty recently. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that came, what the decision there was, or what happened, and why this is again before the Supreme Court?
Right. So in 2016, there was another case before the Supreme Court. It was Friedrichs versus California Teachers Association. So that was school teachers. Rebecca Friedrichs was the lead plaintiff in that case. Again, they filed their case in federal court. It came up through the district and the Circuit Court of Appeals, the Ninth Circuit, and landed on the doorstep of the Supreme Court, and they decided to take it. They had oral arguments, actually, and between oral argument and decision date, Justice Scalia unfortunately passed away, and so that takes the ninth vote off the board. And what you had in this, in the Friedrichs case, was a 4-4 decision. So the court deadlocked, tied, and they just said, well, the Ninth Circuit decision stands right, because we can't we can't come to a decisive opinion.
So what's different now?
What's different now is you now have a full court. You have 9 votes there. So assuming nothing happens like that again, you will have enough votes to break the tie if everyone holds the same.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But it's the court can sometimes be unpredictable. Look at Justice Roberts' vote on Obamacare.
Absolutely.
Or look at Justice Alito's decision on the Pennsylvania congressional boundaries. Those were both decisions that were surprising, at least to me. So is it how difficult or easy is it to tell what the court is going to do in any situation?
Where's your crystal ball?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, as an attorney, I never get into the business of predicting, because I've walked out of hearings before thinking, oh, that went really well, and then it's decided against me, and sometimes you think that went terribly, and you get a good result. I will say I was able to be in the courtroom when this was argued, the Janus case was argued, and it seems that the 4 and the 4 held pretty solidly, that there wasn't a whole lot of wavering there, and so it does appear that Justice Gorsuch will be the swing vote one way or another. But interestingly, a lot of organizations and groups have done research to try to figure out where he's going to come out. no one's really come up with much. He hasn't really had to address this issue at all, and he was completely silent.
I heard he was quiet.
Yeah, he didn't say a word, and I kept looking over at him.
No questions?
No questions, not even a comment. And
that's got to give you a little heartburn.
Yeah, you don't know. So he took a lot of notes and just watched, and he was very much engaged and in tune with what was going on, but he didn't tip his hand at all. And I think that was a lot of the headlines that you saw come out after the oral argument said just that. No one knows where Gorsuch is going. No one's tipped it. He didn't tip his hand at all. So.
Well, the case that you referenced in Pennsylvania that's similar, has that actually been argued in court yet?
No, so that's at the lowest court level, the district court level here, here in the Middle District, and it is filed. It's going. We've actually had a case scheduled, but once Janus was accepted by the Supreme Court for oral argument there, because the issues in the cases are exactly the same, the court actually stayed the case, basically hit the pause button in our client's case and said, we're just not going to go any further because we need to see how the Supreme Court rules, because that will have an impact on our case, no doubt, no matter which way it goes.
So this is going to have significant implications in Pennsylvania. We might see a decision by June, I hear, or sooner.
For the Janus case,
yes.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, their end of the term is typically the last week in June. So by that time, yep, you'd expect to see it. And typically, blockbuster decisions are on the last week, if not the last day. So,
do you have any other big cases going on right now?
We have. It's a complete shift of topic, but we have a really interesting set of cases. We call them ghost teacher cases, and basically what this is, where you have unions negotiate so that the union leaders or even a number of other union officials can actually go on leave, step out of the classroom, work full-time for the union, but still get paid as a teacher. So they get full salary, benefits, pension, seniority, all these types of things. And so these school districts who are struggling or who have to lay people off, these teachers who don't teach a bit, they never step back into the classroom, at least under this agreement, they get to work full-time for the union. And so we've actually brought...
Seems a little crazy.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? And, you tell people that, and they just go, what?
Exactly.
Our tax dollars are paying for that? Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And so we filed a couple of those cases. PSERS, the pension system here in Pennsylvania, has actually revoked credit for a number of those union officials because they said, well, this is completely wrong. You never reimburse the school district. So we have those cases working its way through the system, and we expect or hope for some good rulings in the future there.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us. We're sorry we don't have more time. Yeah. This time always runs out too quickly.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Well, we're so happy that you could join us. And join us again next week for another edition of Behind the Headlines. See you then.